In a world that is constantly changing, executive leaders need daily catalysts for innovation and new perspectives. Our education foundation for grade school and advanced education, as well as avenues for continuing education, are more important than ever for life and workplace success. What are you doing to educate yourself daily and to prepare your children for a constantly changing world? Hi, I'm Dr. Karen Wilson Starks, your host for the Voice of Leadership and for Dr. Karen Speaks Leadership. Today's guest is a visionary trailblazer in the field of education. Her experiences and insights are relevant to public and private education, as well as to corporate educational platforms. Lani Donaldson is the CEO of Engaged Educators and the founder of Up Academy, an innovative independent private school in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. With a profound passion for transforming education, Lani champions a dynamic, student centered approach that prepares students not just for exams, but for life and the complexities of the modern world. Her mission is to create learning environments that are academically rigorous, nurturing, and adaptable. Lani believes in the power of personalized education and the importance of developing each student's unique strengths and potential. She continues to push the boundaries of conventional education to create a world where every student thrives. In addition to developing students, Lani also mentors educators and collaborates with parents to support student growth. She reaches into the community with her influence to advocate for educational policies that prioritize student well being and holistic development. Her upcoming series, The Chameleon Papers, articulates her vision for flexible and innovative teaching practices in schools that are as adaptable as a chameleon in a box of crayons. Because of her success, expertise, and innovation, private enterprises contact her to design, develop, and deliver educational initiatives on a global scale. Her work is a testament of the transformative power of education, resilience, and unwavering commitment to make a lasting impact on the lives of students and the broader educational community. Welcome, Lani, to the Voice of Leadership and to Dr. Karen Speaks Leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. It's a thrill to be here. I'm honored. I've followed your podcast for a very long time, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
I am so thrilled to have you here as well. And thank you so much for following the podcast. Thank you also. I know you've read my book about Lead Yourself First. Thank you for all of that. And today we're going to unpack the wisdom and brilliance that you have to share with the community. Now, I know some people may not know about your school, may not have heard of it. So I want to start there and have you tell us about your private school, Up, which I know stands for Unlimited Possibilities and Potential. So, Up Academy, tell us about who you serve, how your school is different from a public school, what's unique about your approach, why do parents come to you to educate their children?
Well, Up Academy is independent, so it exists outside of the government system. Although we do use the local government curriculum as our minimum standard. Basically, we serve students and parents and families where the regular school system just doesn't seem to work. And there's more and more and more people that are falling within our categories. And basically, what we do is we meet students where they are and we take them where they need to go. What I know to be true is children are not sweat socks. One size does not fit all. And our regular system is, in fact, a one size fits all. And you can't put that on people. It does not work. So we provide a system that we partner with parents to raise outstanding human beings.
Well, let me ask you a little bit more about that. You mentioned that one size doesn't fit all. So a lot of your work is customized in some way to really match that student. So tell us maybe some impact stories. Give us some examples, maybe of some students who have gotten to a completely different place because of being at your school. Where are they today? Or what are they doing in the world that they probably would not have done if they had not had the benefit of being in your environment?
Every student learns differently. Every student has different motivations. Every student has a story, just like adults do, just like companies do. Everybody has a story. And our students, every student has their own program. And a lot of students come to us because they don't fit within the regular system. They get lost. They feel intimidated. The one size fits all is difficult for them. They feel isolated. And we have a number of students who have come and don't fit in with the system, and we supply them with a lot of support. We supply them with a lot of motivation. Some of our students have gone on to, one has come to us just a couple of years ago, didn't fit into the regular system, is now in university taking software engineering because we said, well, if the regular school system doesn't work and you like technology, let's feed you down a corridor of technology and activate that.
Okay, so give us some other examples about who are some of the kinds of students that might not fit in to the regular public school education, and maybe make some commentary about why some students are falling through the cracks these days.
Falling through the cracks. They're more like crevices now, I think. They're getting bigger and bigger. A lot of students, because they have a learning challenge, learn the way the bulk of people are assuming they would learn. Kids that come to us, even though they don't necessarily fit the mold, they're perfectly bright. There's nothing wrong with them. They just learn differently. So a lot of my job is in the first hour, hour and a half that I sit with a student on an intake is to figure out how they actually learn and how we're going to help them and what their aspirations and their dreams are. And then now we build the map for them. So here's where you want to go. Here's where you are. Here's where we get you. And this is how we get you to that point. From kids leaving us and going into med school, kids that are going into the world. There's a lot of different aspects, but a lot of kids that come to us either have learning challenges or just don't thrive in a system that's based on rote learning.
I really love what you were saying about how that you sit down and map it out. So you're sort of beginning with the end in mind, and it's very tailored to that student's strengths, that student's interest, and it probably feels more doable for them when they have kind of like a custom blueprint for creating their future. That's what I hear you talking about.
Yeah, we sit down with both the student and the parent, and we interview them both at the same time, and then we invite the parents to go have coffee and where I can talk to the student when perhaps the older students don't want to vocalize really what's driving them. And then we sit down, and that's exactly what we do. We build the roadmap, we build the blueprint, and along the way, we have check ins. How does this feel? How is it going? It's a lot like corporate, where you would do check ins and reviews and, how are things working? How is the team progressing? All of those kinds of things can be paralleled with education.
Absolutely. And wouldn't it be great, even in a corporate context, if people sort of felt like they had their own personalized roadmap based on their strengths? And some companies do this better than others. However, I think everything you're talking about is definitely relevant to the corporate environment as well. And we'd probably have more people being successful in the workplace if there was an approach to people's development, such as what you are describing. So thank you, Lani. And let me ask this. What prompted you to start Up Academy? What was the reason? What was the backstory, if you will, about starting the school?
I spent a lot of years in one of Canada's larger school system. And I had a deep dissatisfaction about the traditional education system. And the pivotal moment really came after I survived a near death experience where I had 5% survival odds. And I had just given birth to our third child. So my husband came within a whisper and a prayer of raising three girls by himself and only 1 hours old. But when I emerged from that, I was driven by a renewed purpose to make a meaningful impact. And because I had this dissatisfaction with the system, I thought, how can I change it? How can I sit back and I know you speak about it a lot in your book, and just sitting back and reflecting and thinking about my skills and my leadership skills, and can I make a change? Can I? It's a massive, massive undertaking. But when you survive that 5% odd, you start taking on things that you might have thought were impossible before.
Well, now that's extremely interesting. This near-death experience really changed your life trajectory and what you were thinking about. How do you understand that impact? How did that near-death experience make a difference in terms of where you headed after the fact, having survived and become part of that 5%? How did it make that difference for you?
I've reflected a lot on that. And when you come to that place where you understand the vastness of all that is possible and the impact that each one of us can have, it's a space in time that seems to stand still. And when you cross to the point where you start reflecting back and understanding the vastness of it all, you come to a point where you just know that this is what you were meant to do. You have been led this far and you've been put in this position, and now you're given almost the permission to take it all on. If it's God wanting you to do it, or the universe, or whatever your spiritual belief is, that's what I experienced. It was a huge, huge aha and a massive growth moment for me.
A couple of things I heard in that I really want to mention. You talked about really getting in touch with your purpose, what you were here to do, and stepping up to that call, if you will. And I think when you come near to death, it's a realization, I'm not going to be here forever, and I better get with it and figure out what it is that's going to be my contribution to the world or to the universe. And it sounds like you took it that way. What were you doing before that near-death experience?
I was working for the school system. I was both a teacher and an administrator, and really enjoyed my job. But after that, when I could see the whole bigger picture and what was going down the wrong trail and what needed to be changed, where we need to prepare kids for the real world challenges and make a difference in the world so that people are more understanding and compassionate and understanding of each other, and encouraged to be innovative and encouraged to take risks. All of the things that really good corporate leaders are wanting their people to do. But if we don't start dealing with kids when they're younger, it's such a huge leap for them when they get into the corporate world. So that stillness of that near death experience, all of that, it was like I had a gazillion volumes of encyclopedias loaded into my head all at the same time.
That's amazing. So you got gifts in the process. And let me ask you something, because you were just talking about what's needed in the corporate world, what companies are looking for. How are you preparing students for today's workplace? And what can the employers expect from the students who are coming from your school in comparison to those who may be coming from the public sector? And how might you partner with those employers more, and how might those employers partner with your school and others to really get the kind of talent that they're looking for in employees in the workplace?
I think corporations need to partner more with, independence, and it's fine for the government funded education system to develop curriculum and give what they think the world is going to need. What the world is going to need is kids who are emotionally intelligent, that are good critical thinkers, that are compassionate, that are resilient. All of those things, when we go to a school system and we look at how things are set up in Canada, here we spend about 75% of our time teaching the core subjects. So adding, subtracting, reading, writing, those kinds of things. But when you think about it, one of the things that dawned on me when you think about it, other than reading and writing and the ability to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and some of your base mathematical functions, anything that I learned in school, other than that, is either no longer true or is no longer relevant. So we need to teach kids how to learn, not necessarily what to learn. And I think with corporations, they need to encourage their people to risk. In school systems, we teach them to be safe. We teach them that failure is a bad thing. And it's not, it's how we learn. And yes, we're going to keep kids safe. We're not going to push one out in front of a car and say, see what happens when you do something like that. But I think with corporations and schools, corporations need to reach out to schools and go, this is what we're looking for. I can tell you what happened in history in 1066, but it's never made me $1 million. And I don't know why I know it. Is it important to know history? Sure it is. But do I need to be able to write a multiple choice exam on it? No. Do I need to know how to find the answers if my boss comes and asks me to find out what happened in 1066? Sure I do. So there's applicable things that the corporations need to get that information across. And we develop a lot of training programs for corporations that people don't realize that we're the people that developed it, because I'd lose my contract if I voiced that. So I won't, but we need compassion and resilience, and we really need to teach kids not to fear failure.
I really like what you were saying about their teaching them to be risk takers, teaching them how to learn. Because the truth is, they're going to have to learn every day in order to stay relevant in the workplace. And I know even as a psychologist myself, I take a minimum of 30 hours a year in continuing education. And my education is so far back, it's definitely not relevant in the same way as it was when I first obtained it. So if you're not constantly developing, then you're falling behind. And so I love the fact that you're providing your students with the tools that they're going to use every day for the rest of their lives and in order to be successful. So that's really a great thing. I also know that you really understand that technology is going to be really important in the future. So talk a little bit about technology, how that's evolving in education, and what's your understanding about how that's going to fit into the workplace?
Well, technology is fantastic if it's used properly. I always start the year off teaching my kids about artificial intelligence and academic integrity. We need to keep that top of mind, that academic integrity top of mind when we're using technology, because we're developing technology at a faster rate than we can figure out what the consequences of doing so are. With kids, we can develop personalized training programs and personalized education programs for kids using technology, which we couldn't do that before. You wouldn't have enough teachers to be able to do that. So we use technology for that. We have technology that assists kids who have difficulty putting thoughts on paper. We have a lot of technology that is adaptable for children and adults, but it also allows us to create instructional programs. And it allows our little kids, interestingly enough, that we do a thing with little kids, and you can teach little kids how the circulatory system works, and then they can build a video that very simplistically explains the circulatory system. And then the grade 1 and 2 kids will teach the grade 9s the circulatory system in a very simplistic. And a lot of times the older kids go, "Oh, I get it. I was trying to think of it as too much of a complex thing." So technology allows little kids to be able to teach older kids. It allows us to individualize, and it allows corporations to create training programs that can be distributed anytime, anywhere.
It's really wonderful thinking about how we're all learners and we're all teachers. And I love the idea of the exchange that can happen between the younger students and the older students with technology as being a bridge that creates more of the ability for the young children to share what they are learning and even teach it in a way that older children can appreciate and really get something out of it. So that's pretty amazing in and of itself. Lani, you also talked about a few minutes ago, you were talking about compassion, how important that is in terms of what you're teaching children in your school. So, how do you balance this pursuit of excellence with the need for compassion and understanding? How do you do that? How do you do both? Is a both and?
Well, I think you model a lot of that to begin with. Never underestimate the power of emotional intelligence and compassion in teaching. Leading with empathy builds stronger teams. It builds stronger collaborations within our school. We do a lot of collaborative projects. That in itself will foster resilience and commitment in both the school and the workforce. It's just a win-win. We have to celebrate our successes and work at understanding each other. And I think that's one thing that we do really well at the school. We have huge diversity, and I think corporations need to be appreciative of huge diversity and understanding, compassion.
What's really interesting too, you were talking about the collaboration and the teamwork, and increasingly in today's corporate workplaces, people need to have the skills that allow them to listen to what other people are saying, to understand it, and then to figure out how to partner together. And many people come to the workplace absent those skills. So what I hear you saying is that you're preparing your children. They've already been doing it from an early age. So when they get to the workplace, this is not a steep learning curve because they've already been practicing the skills of collaboration and teamwork and partnership, and they just step right in and do it.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch kids. Like this year we're piloting some new programs, and I really want to put kids, older kids and younger kids together and go, okay, so we're going to do a collaborative project, and we're going to figure out how to fix this one thing that is a big world problem. Because if you ask an adult how many things can you do with a paperclip, they'll come up with 10 if you give them enough time. Kids will come up with thousands of things you can do with a paperclip, and they'll go, can it be made out of, foam rubber and float on the water? We can make it into a boat. They have no confines of what's possible or what's impossible. So we need those kids to start looking at solving big problems, because they're the ones that are going to do it. And I have always said that collaboration is going to be a key skill for kids in the future. It's going to be absolutely, and it is now. But if you can collaborate with different cultures, different ages, different belief systems, if you can teach kids to collaborate with that big of a diverse model, we're going to solve a lot of problems.
This is so, so important what you are saying, the value of the collaboration and across all kinds of differences, because you're going to come up with better solutions. And in the workplace, companies are looking for their creative advantage. So someone who's able to do what you're talking about is going to be extremely valuable to their organization, and they're going to see new options and possibilities that other people are not readily going to see, like those children seeing 1,000 uses for a paperclip. Imagine if the adults brought that kind of mindset to the workplace, because it hadn't been drummed out of them in childhood and in some of the school systems that we have in place now. So I think that's a huge contribution to the workplace that you are bringing. Lanny, you over the last few years, the world's been very volatile. So many things have been going on. And how have you had to change during all of these changing and volatile years to innovate even at your own school? And what are some of the new opportunities and services that maybe you had to create because of the way the world shifted?
COVID was so one of the huge things that we could pivot very quickly, which was our advantage. Our other advantage was because we have classes of no more than 5 kids, it's pretty easy to for us to move and change and shift gears. Whereas, public systems that have classes of 42, 45, sometimes 60, they had difficulty. And a lot of teachers weren't very technologically advanced. So some of the public systems, teachers didn't know how to teach online. And one of the things I learned years and years ago when I went to mascot school was that when working online, you have to over accentuate things just like you do when you're a mascot. I took my teachers aside and said, okay, we're going to go to mascot school for about 20 minutes and then you're going to go live on air with kids because I didn't want them to have a whole lot of time to think about it. We used technology and we pivoted very quickly in those challenges. Kids nowadays have some very interesting questions about world leaders and what things they're doing and decisions they're making and questioning is that really a smart thing to do? And I'm thinking, our world is going to be really well looked after when you guys become adults because they're thinking outside the box and they're thinking of solutions for everyone, not just individuals that are influencing the decisions.
This is fabulous. So you've got the children asking good questions and coming up with possibilities that may not be obvious just at one look or one glance. And you were able to pivot and move because of the size structure, the fact that you were already using technology. I also know that you're doing a lot of global work as well. And I especially am interested in hearing more about your project in South America. So tell us about that. What are you doing? How did it start? And what kind of partnerships did you have to have in place in order to create that opportunity?
Yes, it was Central America, not South America. The whole Central America came to me because I had a conversation with a gentleman that is very much into environmental sustainability. And he came to my school and we had a conversation about wouldn't it be great if kids could teach kids and kids could help other kids in developing nations cut the learning curve. And so we started from a position of environmental sustainability. And then that grew into, well, how can we help rural areas that don't have a real developed education system? How can we, because of some of the difficulties they have with not being able to attend school regularly and transportation difficulties and all of those kinds of things, how can we compress learning and how can we speed it up and teach them more in a small amount of time? So we explored those possibilities and now it's coming into a position where we're going to release it and do that because if we kids can learn faster, imagine the possibilities.
What I like about that is that you didn't just assume that what was working in Canada was really going to work in Central America. You realize because of the way that people are living there that it's going to have to be a faster process, a different kind of a format. And so I'd like for you to just maybe extend that notion a little bit and talk about what you've learned about language and cultural relevance from this global work. And I know that, in the United States, I don't know if it's true so much in Canada, but in the US, many school systems are abandoning diversity and inclusion curriculums. They're Xing out of the curriculum, Black history and things like that. What is the danger, if you will, of suppressing cultural history in education? And in your case, how did you leverage the cultural relevance and the language?
If we lose cultural relevance, if we lose language, we all lose. We all lose. I made a comment to one of the corporations that I'm doing some work with that want to teach illiterate cultures to read. And I said to them, you realize that when you teach a culture to read, it changes the culture. And once you take the lid off that box, you cannot put it back on. So be careful and be sure of what you want to have happen. So when we work with different cultures, the first thing we do is we go in and we talk to the elders and we talk to them about culture and their history and what's important for them, for their children and their children's children to learn before we ever start developing programming. But if we step away from diversity and stop teaching history and teaching about culture and encouraging and expanding different cultures as a world, as a global entity, we all lose. And we're not going to go forward. We will only go backwards.
Hi, it's Dr. Karen here, and I hope that you are enjoying today's show. Just wanted to drop in to remind you that succession is an intentional process. So remember to contact me to figure out how best to create that culture of development so that you have a successor when you're ready to leave and go to the next step in your life. You can reach me at Karen, Karen, at transleadership.com. Now enjoy the rest of the show. It was really interesting what you were saying about once you teach a culture how to read and how to write, it changes the culture. And it brought my mind back to the times of slavery in the United States because there was a real concerted effort to prevent the enslaved people from learning to read and write. And as people learned to read, it broadened their horizons, their perspectives. They became aware of more options and alternatives, and they were not content to stay enslaved. And it
Right.
disrupted, if you will, the whole slave industry in
Right.
the US. Say a little bit more about what you meant by that comment when you were sharing it with this person that it's going to change things.
I get excited when we can go in and create education systems. And if you see a child when they first learn something, they get so excited. But the interesting thing is when you teach an adult how to learn something, it's the same reaction. It's just a basic human reaction. And yes, when you teach people to read and write, then they can now think. They can now think out of the box. They can now self-educate. And there has been governments around the world that have no vested interest in people learning and speaking up for themselves and standing up and saying there needs to be change. I always use the box analogy because it's true. You can't put it back on. And when with the whole slavery movement, yes, as soon as people started to read and write, and it's a horrible, horrible thing. Every country in the world has horrible histories of human catastrophe and treating people with such discrimination and lack of compassion and lack of understanding. But we need to learn from that, because if we do not learn from that, we will continue to do that, and history will repeat itself.
And I think we have to understand that there really are some systems and people and motivations in place to maintain the status quo. It is benefiting someone, even if it's not benefiting those who don't know how to read and write at this point. The ones who want to keep them uneducated, they're having a benefit. And I think that what they miss, because maybe of not thinking outside the box, how much greater a benefit they would have as well as everyone else if you have people contributing to society from the best and most of what they can do.
Exactly right, Dr. Karen. when people add to community, it enriches community. And there are people that don't understand how vast and how important our global communities are, as well as our local communities. It's just an extension. But we have to understand that people are resilient. And sometimes people are afraid of change. And that's why they have a resistance to everybody becoming educated. That's sad. It's a very sad comment on humanity as a whole.
You know, you're talking about the fact that we're all interconnected. The world is pretty small when we really think about it, with the ways that we can communicate and travel today. We can be across the globe in a fairly short period of time. And because of that, there are more opportunities than we probably have ever explored, rather than to think about all the disadvantages that exist. How can we leverage the opportunity part of it for the win-win solution, if you will? And I want to ask you to comment on this in this sense. It takes a lot to establish these international partnerships that you have established in order to create these opportunities. It's an intentional process in some ways, and it's also a discovery. Say more about what are some of those key considerations for forming international partnerships? What's important in that? What did you do?
What's really the number one importance is when you're going into another culture, another country, another community, is to first understand. Seek to understand what's going on. I have come into situations where big corporations have come into developing nations and wanting to do things and saying, you know, what do you need? And they'll go, we want better education. So what they do is they take their education component from their own country and plunk it in. Well, it's irrelevant. You can't teach people in Central America about the muskeg in Northern Canada and have it meaningful or useful. So you have to go in and you have to understand what they need, their reasons for wanting it, and then having to match that and go, okay, here's how we can do that. One of the things we're looking at in one of our projects, and I won't say where it is, but is to make a lot of people don't have housing. So one of the things we're going in is building housing, but we're connecting that with their kids going to school. If your kids go to school, that helps pay for your house. So now, because a lot of kids don't go to school because they have to make money to provide for the family unit. So let's make having an education pay.
That's really wonderful. I love it. That's a profound concept, making it culturally relevant, giving them a why for doing something that haven't done, let's say, historically, and may not see the value of it. And so that's really wonderful thinking, to be able to figure out how to speak the language in a way that's, oh, that's why I could be interested in this. And that's how it can help my family. Because at the end of the day, that's what people want across the globe, is something that's going to benefit their family and their generations after them. So that's pretty profound. You know, we've been talking about Up Academy, and we've been talking about some of your global work, some of your work with corporations. And I want to ask you about your organization that's called Engaged Educators, because that's a little different than Up Academy. So tell us about that, how that organization is different.
Engaged Educators owns Up Academy. It's really the parent company, but Engaged Educators develops curriculum. It develops all the building blocks for Up Academy per se. It also builds corporate training programs. It designs various educational entities and communication programs for corporations based on the corporation. As I say, there's lots of corporations that we design stuff for that no one knows we design stuff for them, and it will remain that way. But Engaged Educators is sort of the think tank the entity that produces a lot of the stuff that's behind some of our other companies.
I love that. That's rather profound. So it's a much bigger effort and entity than what it might look like on the surface. You're having an impact across the globe, even if it's behind the scenes. And everything that you're learning from Up Academy and other sources goes into what you develop next in terms of the curriculum. So that's a profound contribution to the world and to society. And I want to go back to something you said earlier, because when you were talking about AI, you were also talking about the integrity that it takes to use it effectively. Say a word or two about that, because many people are pursuing AI today and not necessarily teaching the integrity piece of it. So you've learned something about that. Share a little bit about that connection.
Well, AI in education can do fantastic things. I had one parent say to me, well, why does my kid need to know how to write an essay when AI could do it for him? And after I peeled myself off the ceiling, I said, that's not the point. The point is the student has to learn their own voice. They need to know how to get their own information across. Because if we don't learn to read and write effectively for ourselves, then we're doomed to do, say, and act as other people tell you. That's a dangerous position to be in.
Ooh, I love that. Just maintaining your own personal agency, learning to read and write for yourself is important so that you don't just get led by the nose to places you don't want to go. So I think that's fabulous. So your curriculum and what you're teaching is more about life in a sense, and not just the discrete skills. It's understanding how it all fits together. And that's wonderful. In a way, it protects the children from being pawns, on somebody else's chessboard, so to speak.
Exactly. You don't want to be a pawn and you want to be able to think for yourself, not have to plug it into AI.
Exactly. So, how can corporate leaders cultivate more of this flexibility, this agility, and adaptability that we've been talking about within their own organizations? And what are some of the lessons from Up Academy and engaged educators that can be applied to the corporate setting?
I think a lot of the things that we do at Up Academy, I have learned from what corporate leaders have come and asked me about. And I think corporations need to demand more from our education system, but they also need to command more and reach out and not be sort of separate entities because it's not going to work. And it's proof in the pudding now. We have government systems that we're mass educating people and it's not working. Nobody's winning. And we all need to win.
I
So
think
we
what
need
you said earlier about the customization is really important, because I'm finding that many clients, they're doing a job that maybe others do something similar, but the way they do it, they have their own proprietary process. Some have partnered with trade schools to be able to create internships and externships and other, I'll say, apprenticeship opportunities, so that they're teaching people when they're young how to do it in the way that their company does it. And this creates a pipeline for employment as well. And so I see an opportunity for even greater partnerships with employers and with education systems.
You can do that. You have to be careful when you do that because if you're developing a pipeline, then nothing in your company will change because you're putting the same mindset forward. Whereas you need to have cross collaboration and have different people with different thought patterns and people that do different things differently. I happen to be dyslexic, so I do things very differently from a lot of my staff do. And in a rapidly changing world, you want to make sure as a corporation that you have diverse thinkers.
The companies that I'm aware of who are practicing this, 100% of their population does not come from those relationships. So they still have the diversity coming from other places. And in addition, because they're there on the ground in various ways at those institutions, they are teaching the flexibility of thinking that you're talking about. And when the people come to the company, they know the company more intimately, let's say, than someone who's never been affiliated, and they can see the opportunities for growth and change and propose that more easily and more quickly to the organization as well. So there are ways to do it so that you maintain the real value that you're talking about, which is that flexibility and thinking differently and outside the box and bringing new ideas. And so I just wanted to clarify that they're not trying to create robots, if you will.
True. And it's companies like that that encourage that diversity that gain momentum very quickly.
Mhm.
A lot of the old corporations that didn't adapt are going to go away. It's like people are not going to lose their jobs to AI. They will lose jobs to people who can operate AI.
Ooh, that's a great point as well. You know, and you were starting to say, because you mentioned having dyslexia. And so when you're working with students who are different in some way and where the standard public school system doesn't work for them, you can have empathy for that because of the dyslexia yourself. Say a little bit about how your own personal journey, if you will, helps you to connect better and to provide more of what students need who have different challenges.
I wasn't diagnosed dyslexic till I got to university. I just thought I was stupid and someone made a clerical error and I got in. I lived in fear my first year of university, going, someone's going to find out I don't read very well. They're going to throw me out of here. Wasn't until I sat in a linguistics class that I realized that language had rules. It made sense. So, my job when I meet with a student is to figure out how they learn and then build the path for them so they can learn all of the stuff that they need to. And it could be a small little tweak in how they're accessing information, but that gift actually of being dyslexic allows me to be able to pivot and help other kids not be as frustrated and angry as I was when I got out of school.
Yeah, especially if the school system really isn't designed to help someone who may learn in a different way and see things very differently. I think it's really a benefit that your own history and background has included that particular challenge because you have more empathy for what the student may be going through and some sense about the creativity that's necessary to, I'll say, create something different that's going to work, for that student. And isn't it not shocking, I guess I should say, that we sometimes come to the fields that we come to because of those personal histories and things that we've gone through, and it prepares us to be able to give more of what others may need in that space. So I'm glad you mentioned, your own background with dyslexia. I think that makes you even more valuable in the space where you're operating.
Well, thank you. If you have a learning challenge, I don't believe in learning disabilities. I don't think I'm disabled in any way. I'm highly, highly creative and very flexible in figuring out things very quickly because I had to. And that's the gift I was given. I didn't see it as a gift when I was in school. I might have cursed it a few times, but it is a gift. And being able to figure out how other kids learn quickly is the gift I can give them.
Love that. It's just leveraging who you are, where you are, and your experiences for the good today. So tell us about your project, the Chameleon Papers. What is that about? Who's it for? And when is it coming out?
Well, it's probably come out toward the end of the summer. Depends on how much I can write while I'm on vacation. The Chameleon Papers really are a group of mindful reflections that I've had on how we need to change education, how it needs to shift, and how we need to be able to have our school system be in a position where it's very, very flexible so it can pivot quickly so that we don't have the problems that a lot of people had in during COVID, because as experts are saying, it's going to take kids 5 years to catch up from the education we missed during COVID. It's all about talking about flexibility and the ability to change quickly and ability to adapt. It's primarily for education, but it's very transferable to corporate leadership as well.
Well, that's going to be a real contribution to the field. So I look forward to reading it and seeing it when it comes out. So, how can people reach you, Lani? They may want to reach you because they want to enroll their students in your school. They might want to book you for some speaking engagements, and they might want to explore some of your global educational partnership opportunities. So, how can they get a hold of you? And also, can students come to your school who are not from Canada? What if somebody's in the United States? Can they come to the school?
Anybody can come to the school if they want to come in remotely. Yes, we can even teach the US curriculum in whatever state they come from. We are that adaptable because I've spent a lot of time in a crayon box with a chameleon, so I shift quickly. Yes, people, the best way to get a hold of me really is email. So Lani, Lani, at upacademy.ca would be for the school. For corporate, Lani, Lani, at engagededucators.com will get a hold of me. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. If our phone number is 403-283-3278, but you'll probably get through to one of my assistants, but they'll get the message to me as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for giving all of those ways to get in touch. And I'm sure they'll be calling you about something. And just quickly, what do you like to speak about? So if people are calling you for a speaking opportunity, give us just a sample of some of the topics you like to address.
A lot of education topics. My favorite keynote is Oops, the Wheels Fell Off. How did that happen? Which talks about education, but it can be transferable to corporate as well when you just spin the topic. So I have done that. And for corporations, it's usually mindset and resilient thinking.
That's definitely needed. So that's great. Thank you, Lani. So you've shared a lot of wisdom with us so far today. What additional words of wisdom do you have for my community of corporate business executives?
In order to continue to navigate the complexities of leadership in a rapidly changing world, leaders have to lead with a sense of purpose and a sense of passion and compassion. And it's not about just your journey as achieving goals, but about making a lasting impact for people in the world and in the world around you.
So there's really a spirit of generosity that comes with that when you think about making an impact for the world and people around you. It's not just a selfish focused thing when you think about broader purpose, is what I hear you saying, Lani.
Mhm. And remain open to new ideas. Never stop learning. The minute we stop learning, we die.
Yes, we don't want to die prematurely. So, okay, thank you so much, Lani, for being here with me today. And we're going to close out the show with a few verses from the book of Psalms. And this is Psalm 119, starting with verse 97. And it says, "Oh, how I love your law. It is my meditation all the day. You, through your commandments, make me wiser than my enemies, for they are ever with me. I have more understanding than all my teachers, for your testimonies are my meditation. I understand more than the ancients because I keep your precepts." This is David speaking, and he's talking about the law of God. So, as we are learning so much in our world today, let's remember to also learn what God has already shared with us, his wisdom, which is higher above us than the heavens above the earth, because his ways are not our ways. And when we learn what God has to share with us, we could become smarter than our teachers and even our enemies. So thank you, Lani, for even sharing with us ways to be smarter and to be more effective. And I say to everyone out there, take what you've heard today, apply it, and make a difference in the world as you live your purpose. See you next time. We live in a world with so many divides between groups of people, And today I am with Dr. Clarence Schuler, the president and CEO of Building Lasting Relationships. Dr. Schuler knows that cross-cultural friendships are part of the necessary healing journey. So, Dr. Schuler, tell us more about the power of cross-cultural friendships.
Well, Dr. Karen, I love to do that. And maybe the most important relationship, or one of the most important relationships we can build, are cross-cultural friendships. And the reason, because we have so much racial tension. And we found that if people from different cultures become friends, it actually lowers the racial tension in America. Dr. Gary Chapman, the author of the Five Love Languages, the New York Times bestselling author, and I have written this book, this resource called Life-Changing Cross-Cultural Friendships, how you can help heal racial divides one relationship at a time. And we believe if people would get that book and read it with a friend and talk about it, or make a cross-cultural friend and read through the book together, it can change lives forever and change the racial tension in America and make it a better one. So that's really our goal with that resource.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schuler, for sharing that. And for those of you out there, if you would like to donate and contribute to creating cross-cultural friendships in our world, go to clarenceschuler.com and make sure you pick up a copy of the book for yourself and start a new cross-cultural friendship today. Hi, it's Dr. Karen here. Did you know that you can mine the lessons from your own life and work experiences to inspire your teams and your people? So, in my book, Lead Yourself First, the Senior Leader's Guide to Engaging Your People for Greater Performance and Impact, I share snippets of my life experiences from childhood all the way up to adulthood. I also share what I learned from these experiences, how that learning informs how I lead today, and I share some examples of how I facilitate my client success with these same principles. So I invite you also to apply the same methodology to your life with reflection questions at the end of each chapter. So when you lead yourself first, you then have a foundation for leading others. In chapter 2, which is called Run Your Own Race, I share some stories from my days as an active duty Army officer when my approach to running the 2 miles for the physical training test and also my approach for the 12-mile forced road march had to be different from what other people did. So what I would say is dare to be different. Find your own success formula. Sometimes what works for you is different from what works for others. So remember to run your own race and remember to get your own copy of Lead Yourself First, and you'll find resources for how to run your own race. Hi, it's Dr. Karen here today, and I want to tell you a little bit about Spirit Wings Kids Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and it's an organization that provides profound services for orphans and for widows and families across the globe in many ways, and especially in the country of Uganda. So today I'm speaking with Donna Johnson, who is the founder of Spirit Wings Kids and also a board member. Donna, tell us about some example of the profound work that you're doing in Uganda.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Karen. We were just there a few weeks ago, and it's incredible. It's more than an orphanage. We have a soccer academy that keeps the boys off the street. We have a widows program that matches them with children. And it's just a thriving network of really entrepreneurs. And it's just been such a meaningful blessing to see the work that we're doing there.
You know what, Donna, what I love about what you said just now is you're really talking about their whole lives. You're creating families between the widows and the children. And you're also making sure they have recreation and something to do with the soccer academy. And you're looking at the job situation and the entrepreneurial aspect. And as a businesswoman yourself who's very successful, you're right in line with being able to make that difference. Thank you so much for the difference that you're making. And I'm inviting everyone who's watching and listening today to go to swkids.foundation and donate now. 100% of everything you donate goes to those people who are in need and who are receiving those services. Thank you so much for donating. And Donna, thank you for this ministry. You've been listening to The Voice of Leadership with me, Dr. Karen Wilson Starks. And I want to give a special thanks to jazz saxophonist Ron McMillan for granting us permission to use his gifted music on our show. Thanks for listening, and remember to go to my website, transleadership.com, for more strategies, insights, and leadership resources.